What is the Age of Reason? The Age of Reason takes place in the 18th and 19th centuries, specifically in Europe and North America, 1700 to 1900. What factors influence the social and cultural climate of the 18th and 19th centuries? The Enlightenment, the political revolutions in France and America, and the Industrial Revolution. These are the foundations of what is often described as modernity. Modernity stressed a separation of faith from reason. The dominant intellectual climate retreated from the experiential into rationalism and objectivity. By the late 18th century, Immanuel Kant, 1724 to 1804, sought a religion without revelation. In this perspective, religion effectively becomes ethics. However, while much religion sought to accommodate itself to the new climate, other religious movements reacted against it. In Roman Catholic circles, a suspicion of quietism led to the triumph of a moral ascetical approach to spirituality over an effective mystical one. Spirituality was expressed more in action than in substantial teaching. However, the work of at least two figures demands attention. It appears that Italian Jesuit Scaramelli, 1687 to 1752, was the first person to establish the titles of ascetical theology and mystical theology in a way that became common in Roman Catholic circles. These terms helped significantly in the process of stabilizing the vocabulary of Christian perfection for some 200 years. Notably, the process and progress of the spiritual life was conceived in two stages. French Jesuit Jean-Pierre de Caussade looked back to Ignatius Loyola, to the Carmelite mystics, and to Francis de Sales. De Caussade is not interested in exceptional states, but teaches a kind of mysticism of everyday life based on self-giving or abandonment to God revealed to each person in the ordinary circumstances of life. From this arises the notion of the sacrament of the present moment. Prayer is one of simple attentiveness and waiting on God. Pietism arose in Protestant Germany and flourished mainly in the late 17th and 18th centuries in response to rationalist or over-institutionalized forms of religion. While predominantly related to Lutheranism, Pietism also influenced John Wesley, among others, and later evangelical revivals in different parts of Protestantism. The leading figures in the original German Pietism were Philip Jacob Spencer and his friend August Frank. John Wesley visited a community of Pietists known as the Moravian Brethren. And it was the Pietism of the Moravians that had a particular influence on early Methodism, including its hymnody and the use of periodic love feasts. Overall, Pietism was a religion of the heart and emphasized the presence of God in everyday life. This leads us to Wesleyan Spirituality. Although the Wesley brothers never ceased to consider themselves priests in the Church of England, they represented an evangelical and devotional reaction against the formalism and growing rationalism prevalent in the church of their day. Apart from German Pietism, John Wesley drew on a remarkably wide range of influences, including the early church fathers, A Kempis and the Devotion Moderna, a number of 17th century Caroline divines such as Jeremy Taylor and Joseph Hall, Puritans like Richard Baxter, and in his own time, the Anglican mystic William Law. It also seems clear that Wesley read and was influenced by a number of figures in the Continental Catholic Reform, especially Francis de Sales, representatives of the French mystical tradition, the Italian Theatine priest Lorenzo Scupoli, and a number of Jesuit works. For all his interest in a certain kind of mystical sensibility and attention to personal experimental faith, Wesley was suspicious of excessive quietism or contemplative passivity. Love and service of neighbor and a spirituality that combined prayer and action were prerequisites of scriptural holiness as Wesley understood it. There are 5 elements of Wesleyan spirituality. 1. Prayer, both personal and collective. 2. Scriptural reading and meditation. 3. Frequent communion. 4. Fasting on Fridays. And 5. Spiritual conversations. Collectively, apart from class meetings, there were occasional love feasts, learned from the Moravians, an annual renewal of commitment known as the Covenant Service, and nighttime prayer vigils modeled in the early church. While there were weekly preaching services, Wesley assumed that the people known as Methodists would also attend the normal services in the parish church. It was only after Wesley's death that the Methodist movement definitively became separate from Anglicanism. One of the most striking features of Wesleyan spirituality is hymnody. While hymn singing is now a common feature in most denominations, singing hymns was especially characteristic of Methodist corporate spirituality. While John Wesley translated Moravian hymns, Charles Wesley is credited with composing over 7,000 of his own. In John Wesley's preface to the hymnal Collection of Hymns for the Use of the People Called Methodists, he offers a good summary of what we might call a spirituality of hymns. I would recommend it to every truly pious reader as a means of raising or quickening the spirit of devotion, of confirming his faith, of enlivening his hope, and of increasing his love to God and man. When poetry thus keeps its place as a handmaid of piety, it shall attain not a poor perishable wreath, but a crown that fadeth not away.